Well, hello, writers. Welcome to episode number 209 of How Do You Write? I'm Rachael Herron, and I am thrilled you are here. Today, I get to talk with the amazing Matt Haig about his new book, The Midnight Library, which I fell head over heels in love with. It is about books and libraries and the multiverse. It's got a little bit of everything, and he writes with humor and kindness, and I just love his work, and it was delightful to talk to him. So that is coming up. You have that to look forward to. What is going on around here? Well, for the first time in many years, I am still ahead in NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month. It is the 12th of November as I record this, and I'm a couple thousand ahead. This doesn't happen. This doesn't happen to me. Usually by now, I am 3 or 4 days behind, and I kind of do that whole giving up thing that I have talked about in the past, saying, well, I can't get 6,000 words today. I guess I lost Nano. This month, though, I went into it with the intention of every day is a new day. Every day, 1667 words again. That's my goal. I tend to write books quickly, but not. Usually my books take about 2 to 3 months to write, not 1 month. And right now, actually, I am taking 2 months to write a book. My goal is to be done by the end of December. However, I'm going to win Nano on the way. That's one of my goalposts, is winning Nano with 50,000 words. And I honestly tried to remember, and I meant to pull it up and then I forgot. I can't remember if I talked about my Alpha Smart last week. But you know what? If I did, I can talk about it again. An Alpha Smart is basically just a keyboard. It is a keystroke emulator. So it's a big plastic keyboard that looks like one of those, TRS 80s that we had in the 80s. I guess it was 80s, maybe early 90s. I can't remember. That we would plonk on, and it looks like you should be printing it out on dot matrix paper. But what it does is you type on it. You can't do anything else. There's no internet. There's no nothing. You can just type and see 4 lines at once. It runs on AA batteries. It lasts forever. And then when you're done typing, whatever it is you're typing, you just hook it up to your computer and you hit send, and then it types it for you, kind of like a player piano. You get to watch your words unroll across the screen. And while it types quickly, it still takes, 5 or 10 minutes to download what you're doing. So you got to walk away from your work, and it feels good to walk back and say, how many words did I get? Oh my God, I got 2,400 words in an hour. That's fantastic. So the Alpha Smart has been helping me immensely. I have set up a Nano routine, which I haven't done in a long time. And it's a little bit new to me because the Alpha Smart is new to me. It's a Neo 2 for those of you curious. They don't make them anymore, but you can get them on eBay. I go to my little desk right here, the desk that is not my work desk that I'm sitting at right now. It's just a 90-degree turn from where I am, but I get to look out to the street. I light a candle. I put my headphones in. I listen to calm and soothing jazz. Do not mock me. It works. And I've been playing with this book. I've just been playing. Every day that I start to not enjoy the writing, I back up and I say, okay, what's fun? What is fun? How can I throw something into the mix here that goes along with her character arc, but ups the stakes? I need more hijinks. I need more fun and surprise and excitement. And it's working. I'm really, really having a good time playing with this book. So that has just been joyous. It's been a long time since I worked on a first draft. I've been revising for the last 7 or 8 months, I think, on a couple different books. So this is fun. I'm enjoying this first draft, and I just wanted to share that with you. I hope that if you are doing Nano, if you are behind, throw out the behind number. Today, you need to get 1,667 words, and tomorrow, 1,667 words. And if you're short at the end of Nano, you can either say, oh my gosh, I have 40,000 words. I'm an amazing person. Or if you want to win, you can sit down and have a terrible day of writing terrible words and get 10 or 15,000 words. You can do that too. Me, if I miss it, I will just take that as a miss and a good number of words. But I don't think I'm going to miss it. I think I'm going to make it. Nothing else really going on around here. So I will stop this update. I am just happy with how writing is going. And I hope that you are too. I hope that you come someplace and Tell me all about it. And next week, I will do the drawing for the 2 books I talked about last week, giving away. If you would like to enter to win either of those 2 books, CJ Cook's The Nesting or Becca Syme's Dear Writer, You Need to Quit, you can go to rachelherron.com/win and sign up there. So I'm extending that for a week. So happy writing. Come find me. Tell me how your writing is going. And thank you for listening. Please enjoy this interview. Well, I could not be more pleased today to welcome to the show Matt Haig. Matt, hello.
Hello, Rachel. Thank you
I
for having me.
I am thrilled to have you. I loved this new book of yours. Loved it. Loved it. And I want to talk about that and your process of writing. But I want to give you a little introduction first. Matt Haig is the author of the internationally best-selling memoir Reasons to Stay Alive and Notes on a Nervous Planet, along with 6 novels, including How to Stop Time and several award-winning children's books. His work has been translated into 30 languages, and his brand new book is The Midnight Library. I want to tell you a tiny bit of a story, Matt. For some reason, I got your book on NetGalley from our shared publisher, and then I just forgot about it. And I realized 2 days ago that we had this interview coming up. And I thought, oh gosh, I better dip into that book. But it's a book about libraries. And I just finished that beautiful book about libraries. And I don't want to read another book about libraries. And I realized I'd accidentally read yours a
Ah,
month ago when I first got it. And it just seared into my brain. And for some reason I didn't put the title with your name together.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's so good. It's so fun. And I want to talk about this whole multiverse idea. But first of all, can you tell us a little bit about your process and how you get all this writing done? Where and when?
Well, yeah, I'm not really a writer with a very predictable routine. It really fluctuates. I have months of procrastination, trying to form ideas, writer's block, all of that stuff, staring at a blank Word document and not getting anywhere. And then at the other end of the scale, when I've got the idea, when I'm halfway through the novel, 7 days a week, all waking hours, I'll just be there, just typing away. So it's kind of like a kind of bipolar existence of one extreme to the other. And I sometimes think I need to have more of a sort of rigid routine, but I actually think it's kind of the only way I can work, because I kind of need that period of procrastination and I'm feeling like I'm unproductive when I'm not actually unproductive. We're so conditioned to think that unless we're actively doing or physically creating in that moment,
Yes.
that it's kind of wasted time. And we sort of feel that in our lives generally, but certainly in our working lives. And to be a writer, I feel like, so much of writing happens when you're not actually writing, when you're just sort of like walking, or you're walking the dog, or you're out with your friends, or you're out in the garden, or whatever you're doing. And yeah, I mean, so actually for me, when I'm actually stuck with my writing, I rather than just sort of plow through it, I feel like the best thing I can do is to just sort of step away and do something else. And very often the biggest breakthroughs within a novel or a story happen when you're not actually at your laptop, when you're not in your Word document writing away.
Often when you're not thinking about it at all.
Yeah,
Just
at all.
and
Yeah,
it
you're just
lands on you
in the shower.
full.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's lovely. That's yeah, the loveliest moment. I mean, it's lovely in one sense. It's frustrating that you can't ever, by definition, you can't create those moments. But what you can do,
Exactly.
you can switch off. And sometimes I feel like I don't want to get too sort of pretentiously psychological or philosophical, but I'm a great fan of Jung. Rather than Freud,
Yes.
I'm into Jung.
Yes.
And
Me too.
in the Red Book, which was only sort of like published this century because it's all his sort of scribblings from his sort of psychotic episode, he writes about the spirit of the times and the spirit of the depths being the sort of 2 sides of human nature. By the spirit of the times, he meant being sort of plugged into politics and what's happening in the world and the world around you and the external stuff. And the spirit of the depths is the sort of deeper existential
Mm.
human truth of you. And I feel like nowadays we're so tilting towards the spirit of the times, and we're so lost in the spirit of the times, whether it's like the latest American presidential debate, or whether it's coronavirus, or whatever catastrophe. There's so much to distract us, in this kind of hellscape that we feel we're in, that we're fed through Twitter and rolling news and all of that, and which we have to engage with. I'm not saying we don't have to engage with that. We obviously have to engage. We have to get angry. We have to get organized about the world and stuff. But at the same time, we shouldn't neglect another truth, which is the sort of inner truth of ourselves and the sort of what he called the spirit of the depths, which I'm quite into as an idea. And he thought if you tilt too far one way or another, you end up with neuroses and going a bit mad. And I feel like collectively we're so plugged into the spirit of the times. There's a kind of collective madness is happening from all the world BS that we're surrounded by.
So then how do you honor the spirit of the depths in yourself on a daily basis if you're not actually actively deeply in a book?
Well, books are one way to do it if you're reading a book, actually sort of like to step back and sort of meditate. I feel like books now are probably more valuable than ever in terms of giving you that sort of meditative space where they're interactive in a very deep sense, but they're not interactive in the sense that you feel obliged to give them a Facebook like. Or,
it's really interesting that you say that, though. I agree completely. And I've been reading some rather heady stuff lately. And I find myself with a reaction when reading it that I need to do something with that information. I should probably highlight it. I should probably copy it onto a card. I should probably share it with someone. Instead of, and I think that's the spirit of the times affecting the spirit of the deep, instead of just reading, taking in and thinking, the spirit to move is so present.
Yes, absolutely. And I hate that about myself. Like when I have a thought and I can't just let it be a thought, and I'm trying to shape the thought into a tweet in my head. Like
there's nothing. I have done this during yoga. I have done this during meditation. I actually took myself off Twitter for about 6 months to see if I could break that thought cycle. It wasn't anything about the time I was spending. I wasn't spending too much time, but my brain forming tweets around my life was unacceptable. And it actually did break it.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah. I'm learning. I mean, what I'm doing now, prompted by my partner, is to actually have like Sundays completely devoid of screens, not TV screens. We watched with the kids, we watched Some Like It Hot on Sunday, and we watched an old classic movie or something. But to switch off from phones and laptops and emails, and they're designed to be so addictive and to play with our sense of guilt. I think, like, for instance, like, the fact that people can see when they've seen a message, therefore you feel like you have to respond to that message or you're a bad person. But to actually have that freedom to not get back to emails, to not get back to text messages, to just and now I'm religious, because I'm someone who finds balance hard unless I sort of like set a day in my calendar and say, right, Sundays I don't do it at all, because if I say I'll just do 20 minutes, it ends up being 2 hours. So if I just say, right, I'm not doing it at all, I find that easier than just having 20 minutes.
I love that. I want to try that someday. Maybe not this week. That's a big
scroll free Sunday. Well, I know there's always a reason though, isn't there? There's always a reason.
Not this Sunday.
And there's always seems to be the news seems to be getting exponentially bigger. It's always something. And I suppose, like with you in California, you're thinking, well, I need to be plugged in because I need to be knowing about wildfires. I need to be knowing about this, that, and the other.
Can I open the windows today?
Can I open the window? Yeah. Has the zombie apocalypse happened yet? Are we there? So it's an addictive kind of world we're in, and we're all trying to make it better, but we all have the sense that maybe we're just contributing to it in our own way. Twitter's the thing I'm really ambiguous about, because I've spent so much time venting on Twitter, venting about politics, venting about personal life, venting about mental health. You always have the underlying suspicion that in trying to make it better, are you actually making it better? Are you contributing to the noise, divisiveness? I don't know. More spirit of the depths. That's what I'm trying.
More spirit of the depths. Amen. What is your biggest challenge when it comes to writing?
Biggest challenge? Well, I have a lot. I think indecisiveness. I don't really get proper writer's block as such. I've always got something to write. I just don't know if it's any good or if that's the idea I should be choosing. So I find my biggest challenge is having that barometer of knowing, this is the story I should be writing. So I'll have a lot of ideas in my head, and they'll all obviously be of varying quality, of varying interest if I wrote them. But I'm quite bad in the initial stages of working out which is the one that's going to have legs, which is the one that's going to be the most interesting. And so I actually have to write quite a chunk of it and end up often abandoning quite a lot of writing, because until I've written it, I don't know. So I wish I was a bit better at that. So that challenge in actually knowing what's going to resonate initially before writing. I think I'm quite good as it goes on. I'm quite sort of self-critical, and I that famous sort of bullshit detector. I'm quite good at knowing when things aren't working, and I'm not shy to sort of scrap things or abandon things or chop a chapter. I'm not scared of, I don't get too precious about it. But it's just that initial thing of having different ideas and knowing which direction to go at the start is, it takes me frustratingly long to get there, as it did with The Midnight Library and my previous novel, How to Stop Time. It takes me a while to get into it.
What is your biggest joy when it comes to writing then?
Biggest joy actually is when you've got the idea and you're on the first draft and you are literally the only person who has read your work, and that is the thing. But that is pure writing to me, and that's the aspect of writing. It doesn't matter whether you've never had a novel published in your life or whether you're Stephen King. That is writing, that aspect. Every writer has that. The stuff outside it, the stuff to do with publication, that's a bit that fluctuates in degrees, and that's where how popular you are or what your Goodreads ranking is and all of that. But the actual act of writing itself, I think you have to keep a love for that first draft feeling when it's flowing well. Obviously, there's times where you just want to bang your head against the wall. It's frustrating. But when things are going right, or when you surprise yourself, like you've imagined something you hadn't planned to imagine, but you're just taking a left turn here or something, I think that's the moment where it feels like a really sort of fun activity, almost like a sport, like you're sort of fishing and you're finding new stuff that you didn't have before. I'm a bad editor in terms of when the editor's involved and when we get the notes in, and I really respect my editor. My editor's a very wise person and gives me good notes, but I find that process, it feels really like work, and it feels like you've got a job in that sense. But there's moments in a good first draft where it doesn't feel like work and you're sort of really enjoying it, and you almost can get into like a little trance state when you're lost in your own daydreams, and that's the stuff that always stays good. You get a little bit, as you get a little bit more well read and a bit more well known, I think the neuroses sort of ramp up a little bit around publication, and you think, oh, what we're going to say, and oh, that's amazing, I'm going to get a New York Times book review. But then you're just like, what they're going to say, it's going to be devastating. And so all those stupid things that shouldn't be problems, which are privileges, but you turn them into problems. And but the calming thing for me, and actually the way I cope with having a book come out and be criticized or not criticized or whatever it is, the way I cope with that reaction, which is all unsettling. Even the good stuff is unsettling. That's what I've discovered about my mind. I find even praise can be unsettling, because you get too lost in that outer, going back to Jung, you're too plugged into that. So the way to sort of calm and center yourself is to just sort of hide away and start writing something new, I think.
Hiding away in the writing is really wonderful. And I feel like writers have this gift that we've been given during this pandemic, that we do have a place to go and lose ourselves in a really, really deep way. Can you share a craft tip of any sort on writing with us?
Craft tip?
Yes.
Right. Okay, craft tip. Well, this is possibly, it's a very subjective craft tip, but it's one that I've had. It's one I am into. Breaking certain rules, and the rule, there's a lot of unwritten rules, because books look a certain way often, and in terms of like chapter lengths, a chapter length tends to be in the average novel, I don't know, between 10 and 20 pages. And that's sort of like a given. And I sometimes do that. But sometimes I like to actually see a book and the page as a visual thing, as well as something you just read. I'm quite a visual person, and I actually see it as a visual thing. So I actually kind of like short chapters. So what I did with my very first novel when it wasn't working, it was about 12 chapters long. I broke it up into something like 120 chapters. I sort of scattered it, and playing about with that and seeing certain paragraphs as sort of standout individual things really helped me understand what I'm doing. So I think my main craft tip is to kind of forget in some ways that books have been written before, and you've got this story to tell with the English language, and you're forgetting in some sense, you're forgetting that other books exist, and you're thinking, how best do I tell this particular story? And you forget about conventions in terms of how long chapters have to be, or how long paragraphs have to be, or how you just communicate it. And that doesn't mean you have to be sort of like overly pretentious or do something incredibly artistic or write poems halfway through the page or anything like that. It's just, I think it can help clear the communication if you're uniquely doing it as you, or how you want to communicate it. And so and also it's a trick, I think, because we all like to feel that we're turning through the pages fast. And the one psychological trick, you can make that happen. If you've got a lot of white space in your book, they are going like that. They are turning the pages very fast. And it's a nice feeling, because I don't know about you, but I don't like that feeling of going to sleep halfway through a chapter or ending. I like that feeling of finishing a chapter.
See, and I'm the anomaly, that I love to stop right when I'm really enjoying something. I'll stop in the middle of a sentence during the crisis of a book and put it down and say, "Ooh, I can read that later." No one understands.
Well, that's yeah. No, I do. I get that as well. It's like that Keats quote about the unkissed lips being. It's kind of like that moment of like to come.
Yes.
Yeah, I get that too. But I saw a program once. I can't remember what it was, but it talks about the difference in skyscrapers between New York and Chicago. And it said that, like, in New York, the skyscrapers are all sort of crammed up together in Midtown. It's very sort of cramped together. Whereas in Chicago, there's space around the skyscrapers. And because there's space around the skyscrapers, you actually pay more attention to the individual structure of the skyscraper, become more iconic. So I think maybe I'm an introvert because my dad's an architect or something, but I like the idea of a chapter being like that. Like, you can create space around it visually, and you actually are drawn more attention. So you can take a line out of a chapter and you wouldn't notice it in a chapter, but if you turn that line into its entire page on a page, then suddenly your attention is drawn to that. So I think there was a line somewhere in the book, and I don't break up my books like that until the end, but I sometimes think, oh, if a line comes at a key moment, I'll think, I'll just turn that line and just put it on its own page. And then so I do a lot of that stuff. But it's definitely not right for every book, but for me,
for playing,
like being playful.
I love that. What thing in your life affects your writing in a surprising way?
Okay. Well, the realization, I don't know if this is the right answer to this, but one thing that changed for me as a writer is I used to have a writing room, and then now I don't have a writing room. I literally write on my sofa and write with my laptop, and I actually think I write better and more productively now I don't have a writing room. And
why is that?
I don't know. And again, this is very subjective. This is very me. This is not the universal. I think it's because as soon as I have a writing room and it's an office and it feels like it's work, I go into work mode. And I feel like for creativity, it helps to be a bit in play mode. And so if I'm on my sofa and writing, I actually like that. And I'm also a writer who kind of likes a bit of background noise because I have tinnitus. So I have ringing in my ears all the time. So it doesn't swamp my life or anything. There's lots of times I don't hear it, but if it's total silence, I'll be aware of ringing in my ears. So I've got conditioned to having background noise, and we've got kids, so there's often a lot of background noise. But interestingly, when we bought our house here, I bought it because it had a shed in the garden, and I thought I was going to be like Roald Dahl, who
Heck yeah.
famously had a shed and he'd walk out to his writing shed, and that didn't happen, and that wouldn't happen. And the trouble is, in a cold rainy day when you just want to get up and be warm in your pajamas, you wouldn't go out to the shed. So um yeah, writing on the sofa has been the thing. I think you can look at my books, if you look at my early books that were written in a writing office versus the books that were written on the sofa, they're more enjoyable, the ones that are written on the sofa, because I was probably enjoying myself more
That's
because I was on
fascinating. I
so
wonder, I wonder if your Uber fans who have read every single thing you've ever
yeah,
written online, I
they'll
wonder if
work
they would
out the
agree.
ones, yeah, the ones where I was in a sort of uncomfortable chair at the office. Well, something
Uncomfortable chair
I
makes me
massively
chuckle.
changed. I massively, I mean, I've written quite a few books, and lots of them are seriously unread books that no one really read. But my first three books, well, the first one did okay in the UK, but then the second and third didn't do as well, and they were so bleak. And it's so interesting, because now if I'm criticized, as I sometimes get criticized by reviewers in the UK, they will always say the same thing. They'll say, oh, it descends into sort of optimistic platitudes, or become like a sort of like a Facebook wall of, they always say that same thing. And I'm not actually uniquely proud of that, because, well, first and foremost, I'm not a snob about inspirational quotes. If someone can say something in a simple way, even if it feels a bit cliched, a simple, clear expression to someone else that offers some comfort,
Yes.
I don't see what's wrong with that. But also, you know, the writing that I'm ashamed of having written was when I was younger, and I thought that to be a writer, you kind of had to reflect the bleakness and pessimism of the world. And I literally wrote a book called The Possession of Mr. Cave, which got very well reviewed. No one read it at all, but reviewers read it and they really liked it because it was totally miserable. And and literally everyone died in it. It was just like terrible. Don't read that book. And anyway, and that had no optimism or no sort of happy platitudes, as they'd say. And I reached a point, and I don't know what happened in my 30s, but I thought, if you're contributing something to the world, why be ashamed of putting some sort of hope inside it or some optimism inside it? I'm someone who genuinely, in my 20s, I nearly died because of pessimism, because I was
Mm.
suicidally depressed. And depression gave me pessimism, and that pessimism wasn't real. Yes, I know we live in a screwed up world, but the voice in my head that depression was giving me was like, oh, you will definitely be dead by the age of 25. Your partner will leave you. This will happen. Nothing good will happen. Da 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 da. That became like a sort of Fox News of the brain, which was just this beaming this sort of beaming this sort of terror cycle of stuff. And so, in a way, optimism was more authentic for me. Optimism was, and not only that, even if pessimism and optimism are equally inauthentic, only one of those things is useful, and that's optimism.
Yes.
Pessimism is not psychologically useful. So optimism, you have to have some hope. And so, what I try and do now is take a pessimistic situation, or a person in a bad place, or a terrible situation, like a suicidal woman between life and death, or whatever, and try and then find the hope inside it. And I think that's a bit more useful. And I know it's a bit weird to talk about novels having a use, but I feel like, why not offer something as a human communicating to another human that's got some
So it's
practical use.
perfect segue into the book. Will you please tell us a little bit about what the book is saying?
Yes, sure. The Midnight Library is a book about a woman between life and death who finds herself in this infinite library, and all the books on the shelves are different versions of her life if she had lived it a different way. And she's someone who's full of regrets. So one of the books is the Book of Regrets, which reminds her of all the things and decisions she's made, which she regrets. So she now got a chance to undo those regrets and live in try out these different existences with the help of a librarian, Mrs. Elm, this sort of godlike librarian. And she gets to see if the grass really is greener in the life where she was an Olympic medalist, or the life where she was a rock star, or a glaciologist, or owns a vineyard, or whatever. So she can see. And some of those lives, obviously the grass isn't greener. Some of those lives are perfectly fine, but maybe not right for her. And she has to work out the best way to live.
And it is beautiful and
Oh, thank you, Rachel.
wonderfully written and dragged me through. Generally, I start the books and then I only finish them if they drag me through, and it just dragged me through beautifully. Uh, so what you're exploring in this book is really the idea of multiverses, right? Of
Yes.
every choice that we do not take creates an infinite number of multiverses. Do you believe in that?
I do actually. I think there's a good scientific basis for believing
Yeah.
in that. There's a book by, I think he's American, a guy called Brian Greene, who wrote a book called The Hidden Reality, about how all our current scientific thinking leads to the idea that there are multiverses. There might be different kinds of multiverses. Like there's some people believe in universes beyond the universes, and others believe that the multiverse is right inches away from us if we've just done a different thing. But yeah, I do. But I also believe that we have the power to always enter a new universe within our own timeline simply
Yeah.
by the things we do. And I find that a very empowering thought, because it can be a bit of a sort of depressing thought to think, oh, there's all these better lives out there, but to actually realize you've got the power within your life to not necessarily become a billionaire or a rock star or whatever, but to actually, suddenly within the same situation, within the same people in your life, to actually have a totally different outlook upon it. And I think that's a very hopeful thing.
What you did with your book too, in the framing of it, using the books as the device to display that, I thought was so approachable and understandable, because I often think about the multiverse and get
Yeah.
very confused and stop thinking and then pick up Twitter. But it allowed me to think of it in another way. It's an infinitely branching library and it's all hers. And I just want to say that I recommend it to anyone, especially anyone who likes books. Did you have Mrs. Elm yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think Mrs. Elm is a bit of an amalgam, but I definitely had an English teacher who was a bit like Mrs. Elm, like who seriously got me into books as something that weren't just things that are there to be sort of worthwhile and do me good, but there is a proper thrilling, life-enhancing entertainment medium like
Yeah.
cinema or whatever else it is. And yeah, she was one of those people. And my grandmother, actually, my grandmother died when I was quite young. Would often take me into the forest, finding things, and she'd know all about the forest, and she just seemed full of infinite wisdom. So a bit of her in there as
Hmm.
well.
I had a Mrs. Craig, my grade school
Okay.
librarian. She taught me how to crochet inside
Ah.
the library. It was
Oh, very good. Yeah, well,
wonderful.
I love libraries as spaces that are more than just books.
Yeah.
They're important as a space. Like our town centre libraries, they are spaces that don't just like us as a consumer, but they like us for us. And we don't have many of those spaces. They're kind of like secular churches, aren't they? That aren't just
Yes.
about money, and then we're not a wallet to them. We are, something beyond that. And
Yeah.
I think one thing I think America does far better than Britain and Europe is value libraries. I think you really play, our libraries are being sort of decimated and underfunded and closing down
Mm.
in the last sort of areas where they need to be. In our more deprived areas, it's very hard to find a library now. Whereas I feel like libraries certainly are still very much center of book culture in America, and that's something that's
Center of the
very,
book culture, but they're also turning into a social safety net center as well.
yeah.
As the social safety net is cut from other places, then we're forcing these librarians to our librarians must become social workers and mental health experts
Right.
and all of this. And so I 100% agree with you, but I wish we would also give some more money
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
always more money to libraries. Always. I live in, I mentioned in Oakland, and our library system is amazing. And what I can do is I request the book I want. I'm usually the first one to request it. And
Yeah.
that means they buy it in the ebook and they send it to my Kindle, and the author gets paid and I get to read it for free 4 days later.
Yeah.
It's the best ever,
Yes.
ever. Never
That
have to
is
leave the
good.
house. Yeah.
Yeah. And like certainly in our country, the debate around libraries was often says, well, the internet's made it irrelevant because we can access all this information
Oh
and we can
no.
access
But
books.
what
And
about
it's
the
like,
books?
what about the books? What about that four-dimensional space that you can go into? And
Yes.
the fact that it's a kind of thing that glues a community together, isn't it? You've got a
Yes.
library, you have hospitals, you have a church, but you have a library at the heart of it. And yeah, so, we're not quite in the state America's in with leadership, but our
Nobody.
leadership, yeah, but we've had over 10 years of a conservative government that have
Yeah.
been not good for culture and communities at all. So
I
yeah.
think if we were not collapsing over here, we'd be spending a lot of time commiserating with you. But
Yeah, I
meantime, we're
know you
trying
do.
to put out
You do it.
fires.
It's so American to be absolutely the best, even at being the worst.
You know it is. It's embarrassing. All of it. All of it is embarrassing.
It's I know.
Matt,
So I know. So
thank you so very much for doing this with me. I really appreciated talking to you. I really loved reading the book, so much so that I forgot it was your book and I didn't want to read this other guy's book about libraries because it was yours. And I love it. So
thank
I
you,
have no
Rachel. That
need
was a
for
joy.
any more library books. It was
Uh,
beautiful.
that
Highly
was a joy,
recommended.
and hopefully in some post-COVID happier future, I'll meet you in Oakland or San Francisco, and we'll have an event, and that'll be good.
Absolutely. That would be wonderful. Okay. Thanks,
All
Matt.
right.
Take care.
Cheers, Rachel. Bye.
Bye.